Cuts your hair.
Holy ground, Highlander! Remember what Ramirez taught you.
Released in 1986, Highlander emerged like a slash across the silver screen, opening up a blood-drenched mythical universe where the glamorous New York of the 80s blended with the fiery medieval Scottish Highlands. There existed a chilling truth. Among the immortals, only one could survive to claim the prize. Connor MacLeod, a warrior from the Highlands, after a bloody battle, discovered he could not die. Under Ramirez's guidance, he learned the terrifying secret. Immortality only ends when a sword severs fate from the body, and every warrior is relentlessly hunting without mercy. Through centuries of cursed destiny, witnessing broken love and the gradual loss of loved ones, MacLeod was forced to confront Kurgan, a bloodthirsty monster hungry for power, the final enemy standing between him and liberation. Highlander is not merely an epic of sword and blood, but also a poignant tragedy of love, echoing the heartbreaking question, who truly wants to live forever? With Christopher Lambert, Sean Connery, Clancy Brown, and the immortal music of Queen, the film etched its name as an indelible monument in cinematic history. But behind that glorious light lay a dramatic behind-the-scenes hell. A film vault catching fire, terrifying accidents on set, along with countless shocking secrets about the film crew that have never been revealed. Prepare yourself, because right after this are the 20 most shocking truths about Highlander, stories that will make you unable to believe they actually happened. 1. Argentina's economic tragedy turned Highlander 2 into a cinematic nightmare. After the success of the first part, Highlander left a deep impression but also strained the film studio due to massive costs and an arduous production process. Therefore, when deciding to make a sequel, the producers tried every way to cut costs, and Argentina, with its promise of cheap prices, became the destination. But instead of a revival, this was the beginning of a nightmare. Argentina at that time was caught in a fierce hyperinflationary spiral. Prices escalated daily, turning every plan into fake waste paper. Costs skyrocketed, insurance companies fearfully withdrew, and investors panicked and intervened in the script. Russell Mulcahy, who created the legend with the first part, had to witness his brainchild torn apart and distorted into a bizarre story. The immortals were suddenly explained as aliens from a distant planet. Audiences were stunned, critics were outraged, and Highlander 2, The Quickening, was immediately listed among the most disastrous sequels of all time. Mulcahy later had to re-edit a director's cut to salvage his honour. But all efforts only deepened the indelible stain. From that painful stumble, another strange secret echoed from the very first seconds. 2. The legendary narration was recorded by Sean Connery right in the toilet. From the very first seconds, Highlander stunned with a deep, resonating voice, echoing through space as if from another world. Audiences were convinced this was advanced audio technology, the magical hand of the editing room. But behind that grandeur lay a very mundane secret. Sean Connery recorded the entire narration right in a hotel toilet. It was the brick walls and confined space that created the ghostly reverberation effect, making Connery's voice a mythical opening for the entire film. That coincidence turned what seemed like carelessness into a masterstroke. A moment that, upon knowing the truth, everyone has to give a wry laugh. An immortal icon born in the most unexpected place. But it is precisely this paradox that creates its unique character, etching Highlander into the memory of viewers. At this moment, behind the scenes, other ghosts of Highlander's production also began to appear. 3. The entire film vault burned down. Battle scenes forever. Lost in cinematic history, there are losses that cannot be measured in money, and Highlander suffered one of them. A terrible fire swallowed up all the unused film reels, forever burying scenes that audiences would never get to see. Most notably, was the battle between Kurgan and young Dal Kim, an immortal from the East wielding two swords that slash through space in a modern office setting. That confrontation, if it still existed, would surely have become one of the most unique and violent segments of the entire series. Not stopping there, the fire also destroyed other precious moments. Connor MacLeod's encounter with Thomas Jefferson in a historical flashback, or his slow reveal of the legendary katana to Brenda. These footage could have deepened the character's layers, expanded the immortal world, but now they are only fragmented memories in the minds of the film crew. And then, from amidst the ashes of the vanished footage, an even crazier plan was once conceived and then forever abandoned. 4. The final battle was once supposed to have a giant dragon that never appeared. Did you get so tense you screamed when you watched Connor MacLeod and Kurgan clash in their mortal combat on top of the Silvercup Studios building? Lightning tore across the sky. Sparks flew from the swords, each slash echoing as if heralding the end of a centuries-long hunt. That is the climax that every audience remembers, but few know that this scene was once intended to be many times crazier. Director Russell Mulcahy initially did not want the battle to end immediately after Kurgan was decapitated. He harboured a bizarre idea. Kurgan's dragon-shaped helmet would crack open, transforming into a giant fire-breathing monster, forcing Connor to continue fighting to his last breath. A surreal image, combining fantasy and nightmare, ready to push audiences to the brink of hallucination. But in 1986, cinematic technology could not create a convincing monster. The depleted budget led to the idea being scrapped, leaving a simpler but equally intense duel. However, just thinking about Connor having to wield his sword against a fire dragon still sends shivers down one's spine with regret. Everything did not stop there, because the film continued to suffer another disaster coming from its own promotional campaign. 5. The US poster was slammed by the director for resembling a psychopathic killer's photo. Imagine you are an American audience in 1986, eagerly awaiting a thrilling sword-fighting sci-fi movie. But then, when you go to the theatre, what hits you is just a gloomy black and white poster. Christopher Lambert's face appears blurry in the frame, his eyes hollow, his gaze dark, looking no different from a criminal's portrait on a police file. Instead of conveying an epic aura, it made audiences associate him with a dangerous psychopath. Director Russell Mulcahy was so outraged that he publicly criticised the studio's own promotional campaign, calling it a crime against the film. And just as he predicted, Highlander failed miserably in the US, extinguished right at the box office. However, in Europe, colourful, mythical posters ignited the flame, turning the film into a phenomenon. This bitter contrast deeply etched the tragedy. The same work, but its fate split in two just because of an advertisement image. While the film struggled to find its footing at the box office, on set, an even more terrifying chaos was unfolding. 6. Drunk extras wielded real axes, making the set. Bloody the epic battle scenes in the Scottish Highlands at the beginning of the film were praised for their ferocity, chaos, and chilling realism. However, few know that this realism came from an extremely dangerous reason. The extras were actually drunk. During a break, hundreds of people, hired to play warriors, drank until they were tipsy, then returned to the set with real swords, spears, and axes in hand. When the cheers erupted, the steel blades came down out of control. Blood was shed, accidents happened constantly, and the film crew was forced to immediately deploy a medical team on standby at the location. The chaotic scenes thus carried the brutal weight of reality, something no choreographer or special effects could create. But the price paid was blood, sweat, and fear that enveloped the set. And amidst that chaotic atmosphere, another legendary rock band was about to infuse immortality into the film. 7. Queen agreed to write one song but ended up creating an entire immortal album. Initially, Queen only agreed to compose one song for Highlander. However, when the legendary band was shown the rough cut, something magical happened. Freddie Mercury, Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon were immediately captivated by the immortal world, by love, loss, and the obsession with who truly wants to live forever. Each member of the group chose a distinct emotional thread to write music, and thus a series of songs were born. Princes of the Universe, It's a Kind of Magic, Who Wants to Live Forever. Queen's music combined with the immortal story created an explosive synergy, turning the film into a work that was both cinematic and an immortal rock symphony. To this day, Highlander is synonymous with Queen, and Queen cannot be forgotten for their mark on the film. But right on set, a big star entered, bringing an arrogance that made him pay the price. 8. Sean Connery received $1 million for 7 days of filming and was still injured due to arrogance. When Sean Connery set foot on the set in Scotland, the entire crew was imbued with prestige. He was a global icon, the immortal James Bond in the audience's memory, and his mere presence made the film seem to wear a cloak of distinction. The producers spared no expense, $1 million for exactly 7 days of work, a figure that made all of Hollywood bow down. Connery played Ramirez, Connor MacLeod's mentor, with an unshakable confidence. But along with that came untamed arrogance. Connery declared that he didn't need to practice, didn't need sword training, just stepping in front of the camera was enough. The film crew hesitated, but no one dared to contradict the legend. Then what had to come came. In a fierce fight scene, Connery was careless and injured, making the entire set gasp. Nevertheless, he still completed the role with an arrogant charisma, making Ramirez one of the most memorable characters. And while the screen legend blazed, danger still hung like a sword in the hands of the main hero. 9. Christopher Lambert's severe nearsightedness and blind sword wielding almost cost a co-star his life. Christopher Lambert, the face of Connor MacLeod, carried a secret few knew. He was severely nearsighted. Off-screen, Lambert always had to wear thick glasses, but on-screen, the image of an immortal warrior could not appear with eyeglasses. So he was forced to engage in sword fights almost blindly, guided only by feeling and instinct. As a result, every swing of the sword contained deadly danger. Once, the blade sliced straight across a co-star's hand, making the entire crew shudder at the near-serious accident. The atmosphere on set was as tense as a violin string. Everyone held their breath when Lambert wielded his sword. However, it was precisely this recklessness that created realistic, wild, and chaotic fight scenes, making audiences believe in survival with every breath. You might not have guessed that this entire legend originated from something incredibly simple. 10. A college student's thesis unexpectedly gave birth to Highlander. It's hard to believe, but the truth is, Highlander didn't start in a grand Hollywood boardroom, but in a university lecture hall. Gregory Wyden, while a film student at UCLA, wrote a script called Shadow Clan as his graduation thesis. In it, he imagined a world where immortals roamed throughout human history, could only be killed by decapitation, and had to fight each other until only one remained. That bold idea was not only highly praised by his professors, but also caught the eye of Hollywood. From those pages still smelling of ink, Shadow Clan was bought, edited, and turned into Highlander. A seemingly trivial assignment became the cornerstone that spawned an immortal franchise, spoken of for decades to come. And when that story was put into the Hollywood machine, a host of A-list stars had the chance to become Highlander warriors. 11. A string of Hollywood stars. Almost became Connor MacLeod, but missed the opportunity. Before Christopher Lambert became synonymous with Connor MacLeod, the role was considered for a long list of superstars. Mel Gibson, who later became famous for Braveheart, Kevin Costner, the golden face of the 80s, Patrick Swayze, Michael Douglas, even Sting were all in the running. Kurt Russell even agreed, but at the last minute withdrew, leaving the golden spot open for Lambert. If one of them had accepted, Highlander would surely have had a completely different appearance, perhaps more glamorous, perhaps more dramatic, but certainly no longer the elusive mystique that Lambert brought. It was his imperfection, a Frenchman playing a Scottish warrior with sad eyes and broken English, that made him an unforgettable immortal character. Then, amidst those shining Hollywood names, a shocking declaration suddenly emerged from the world of wrestling. 12. Hulk Hogan. Claimed he was offered the lead role of Connor McLeod. Hulk Hogan, the legendary wrestling star, once shocked everyone by claiming that he was the first person offered the role of Connor McLeod. According to Hogan, he declined to fully dedicate himself to his booming wrestling career. However, many in the film crew believed this was just a misunderstanding. Perhaps he was offered a supporting role in the opening wrestling scene, not the main character. Whatever the truth, just imagining a muscular wrestler with long blonde hair and a distinctive moustache in the role of a Highland warrior is enough to give audiences chills due to its incongruity. Fans even joked that if Hogan had actually played the role, Highlander might have become a farce rather than a cinematic legend. Therefore, this story is circulated as one of the wildest and funniest anecdotes surrounding the film. And if Hogan once caused controversy due to his unsuitable appearance, Lambert also left his own mark with his strange voice. 13. Lambert's peculiar voice was actually intentionally maintained. When Christopher Lambert appeared in Highlander, audiences immediately noticed something unusual. His voice sounded strange, a mix of many indefinable accents. Initially, many thought it was just a limitation because English was not Lambert's native language. He was French. However, director Russell Mulcahy saw something special in it. In the film, Connor McLeod is an immortal who has lived for centuries wandering from one land to another. Such a character should not speak with a standard accent, but rather a hybrid voice, bearing traces of countless cultures and eras. And Lambert, with his imperfect pronunciation, inadvertently became the perfect embodiment of that idea. From what seemed like a disadvantage, that one-of-a-kind voice became what made Connor McLeod more mysterious, more immortal in the minds of audiences. But while Lambert brought uniqueness through sound, in the opening scene itself, the film almost had a completely different choice. 14. The opening battle was once planned to be filmed on a hockey rink but was flatly forbidden. According to the first draft of the script, you would have met Connor McLeod in the setting of a crowded hockey rink. Amidst the fierce clashes on the ice, Connor would vividly recall ancient memories of the Scottish battlefield, a perfect reflection of sports violence and the bloodlust of war. But that plan was flatly denied. The NHL strongly objected, fearing that the film would brand hockey as a bloody sport. Under that pressure, the film crew was forced to abandon the entire scene and find another option: wrestling. And it was this involuntary decision that led to a fateful coincidence. The opening scene in the frenzied atmosphere of Madison Square Garden, interspersed with medieval flashbacks, became iconic, creating Highlander's unmistakable cult quality. At this point, the film's antagonist himself made the behind-the-scenes tremble with his haunting intensity. 15. Clancy Brown embodied Kurgan to the point of terrifying the entire film crew. Clancy Brown didn't just play Kurgan, he became Kurgan. With a giant physique, a deep voice and sharp eyes, Brown entered the set like a beast that had been chained too long, now ready to tear apart everything in front of him. Every time he donned his black armor, the atmosphere on set immediately grew heavy, to the point where many crew members avoided him, frightened as if a demon had stepped out of the screen. In one scene, Kurgan uttered venomous insults at nuns and priests. The film crew stood still, while Brown, after the scene ended, had to quickly apologize because he himself shuddered at the character's brutality. But that ultimate immersion transformed Kurgan into one of the most formidable and memorable villains of the 80s. And to depict Kurgan's battles, the film crew had to devise an extremely dangerous, crude, and chilling trick. 16. The sparks from the swords were actually emitted from car batteries. Every time the swords clashed, audiences gasped at the fierce sparks that flew, seemingly cinematic magic. But in reality, there were no modern special effects. The film crew used an incredibly dangerous method, connecting electrical wires from car batteries to the swords themselves. When they touched, the current running through the steel made sparks brightly erupt. On screen, these were classic frames, but on set, Christopher Lambert and Clancy Brown were literally swinging swords in a state where they could be electrocuted at any moment. Lambert admitted his heart would pound out of his chest every time he swung his sword. But despite all the dangers, the final result was still not well received in the US, and the film's fate then took a different turn across the Atlantic. 17. Highlander. Failed miserably in the US, but became a phenomenon in Europe. Upon its release in the US, Highlander was met with a cold reception from critics. A confusing script, over-the-top visual style, and rock music deemed out of place. Paltry box office revenue led many to believe the film would soon fall into oblivion. However, in Europe, the situation completely reversed. In France, Christopher Lambert's homeland, audiences lined up to see their idol transform into an immortal warrior. The combination of mythical atmosphere, Queen's soundtrack, and unique filming style was seen by European audiences as a rare cinematic gift. Every screening was packed. Box office revenue exploded, turning the film into a cultural phenomenon. It was this success outside the US that saved Highlander, paving the way for sequels, television series, and an entire franchise spanning decades. However, even as it became a legend, the film still held many secrets behind the scenes. 18. The ending was once planned to take place on top of the Statue of Liberty. In the first drafts, the climactic duel between Commodore MacLeod and Kurgan did not take place on top of Silvercup Studios as we see it. Director Russell Mulcahy dreamed of a more spectacular sequence, the two immortals clashing on the crown of the Statue of Liberty under lightning-torn skies, swords sparking amidst the symbol of America. That would have been a surreal image, both sacred and fierce, transforming the climax into an immortal spectacle in cinematic history. However, harsh reality thwarted that dream. The budget was insufficient to build the colossal set, and cinematic technology in 1986 could not convincingly recreate such a scene. So Mulcahy was forced to scale down, placing the decisive battle on the rooftop of Silvercup Studios in New York. Although more modest, it was precisely that confined space that made the battle feel oppressive, raw, and intimate, becoming one of the most iconic rooftop confrontations of the 80s. A golden dream left on paper, making way for another legend to be born. 19. Nick Offerman was enraged that Chris Pratt had never seen Highlander. It's not just ordinary fans who revere Highlander. Even Hollywood stars consider this film a must-know classic. Nick Offerman, famous for his role as Ron Swanson in Parks and Recreation, is a true fan. He has watched it over and over, knowing every Queen melody, every sword fight, every immortal line of dialogue. So when he learned that his co-star Chris Pratt had never seen Highlander, Offerman blew a fuse. He constantly teased Pratt on set, forcing him to watch the film immediately, considering overlooking Highlander nothing short of a cultural crime. This seemingly minor story proves the film's immense cultural weight. It not only resonated with the 80s generation, but continues to make modern stars argue, get angry, and keep it alive. And while those controversies show the film's influence, the main actor, Christopher Lambert himself, once had an incredibly naive secret. 20. Lambert took the role without knowing his character was Scottish. When Christopher Lambert accepted the role of Connor MacLeod, he had only been studying English for a few months. His limited foreign language skills meant he didn't truly understand every detail of the script, only vaguely grasping the spirit of the story. So when he stepped onto the set, Lambert was shocked to discover that the main character was a warrior from Scotland. In that awkward situation, Lambert's broken French accent should have been a drawback. However, on the contrary, it inadvertently created perfect mystery. An immortal who had lived for centuries, travelling all over the world, surely could not maintain the standard accent of one land. That naivete became destiny, making Lambert the face forever associated with Connor MacLeod, despite all initial criticisms. Highlander is a unique monument where cinema, music and mythology intertwine into an immortal epic. The film is both fierce and tragic, leaving a deep impression on the hearts of many generations of audiences. From the sparking sword fights to the haunting Queen soundtrack, everything became an indelible memory. Even after more than 3 decades, Highlander's appeal remains intact, just like its message. There can be only one. If you found this video engaging, don't forget to like and share it so more people can enjoy it. And remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next cinematic secrets.